here's the backstory. I got sent this video by like 2 or 3 different people or friends, and I looked at it and I quite liked it. I sort of thought, wow, this guy is doing Apologetics 3.0, and I wasn't sure what I meant. And so the talk started with that. So it's an attempt to sort of, I don't know, just give in broad brushstrokes, what do I mean with Apologetics 3.0? What was 1, and did I miss 2? Um, and then let's have a look at him as a possible example of that, and then let's discuss. So the catch is the time. So I'm going to do very a whirlwind tour. I'm making the assumption that if you are here, you have some idea what apologetics is. Okay, so giving a reason for the hope that we have, a reasoned defense for a particular worldview or belief, inviting others into that, or at least inviting them to take it seriously. Now, I suppose any worldview can do apologetics, but it's often used in a Christian context. So basically, an invitation to non-Christians, or perhaps also something to strengthen Christians. And I think the issue is, I'm not expecting you to be able to read that, but just to show, if you sort of think about the flows of thought and worldview and stuff, you can get very complex. And you can probably, you can do whole PhDs and courses on it. And I somehow feel that what I'm going to do is a little bit too simplistic, okay, that I'm going to be painting in far too broad brushstrokes, but I'm giving myself just a few minutes to just sort of, I suppose, try and line up what I mean with apologetics 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be, all the disclaimers, you've got them, okay? It's also, it's going to be possibly a little bit Western focused, which arguably perhaps is the dominant stream of where we are right now. But let's give this a go. So three frames of thought. Here's what I'm calling them. That is not common terminology, or perhaps some people talk about soft postmodernism and they mean a slightly different thing than I mean, but I'll try and explain the terms. And this is the flow, this is the plot. Now, as one sort of frame of thought or way of thinking and being develops, it doesn't totally replace the other one, okay? So all 3 of those will still be with us. And also the boundaries aren't as neat as I'm showing them. They flow into each other. And the point then being that then when we do apologetics, there's different types of apologetics that we would do with each of these streams. So I'm calling them 1, 2, 3, easy to remember. So in terms of the modernist project, I'm assuming you probably, some people in the room will be able to explain this better than I can. Okay, but it's the project of applying ourselves, applying reason, applying knowledge, and the narrative of progress. If we just all put in that effort and keep our heads, then we can do progress. And so there's the story of progress in terms of economic growth, and I think there's a lot here, right? A lot of medical advances we have through this sort of project. We have comforts that we've never had. We've got toys to play with that we've never been able to. There's some really good things in here, okay, at least in part. Also choice, okay, that almost like the ultimate good becomes choice, and some of the outflows of that. Human rights, huge, I think, human rights advances in that. Lots of freedoms from stuff, lots of freedoms for stuff. And I think very central also in this project is the role of science and technology. And, we can use technology or technique in order to solve everything and to create a better world. And we will reach that place where humans are happy. Oh my goodness, now technology is also causing problems for us, like, I don't know, pollution, or I don't know, them algorithms that polarize us in social media. How are we going to solve it? Well, I know, more technology, right? So we're going to do this thing. So you'll see in the video, knowledge will empower. So the role of objective reason, so knowing stuff, but also having the will to apply that knowledge and the power to move that forward. So a case could be made that this resulted in the most medically and technologically advanced societies that humanity has ever known. Okay, that it's resulted in the most free and equal societies that have ever existed. And I've told you I'm being simplistic. If we had more time, a valid objection would be, yes, but isn't Marxism also a form of modernism? Yes, it is. Let's move along rapidly. So possible apologetics into that sort of space is what I would call classical apologetics, often centered around arguments for God's existence. And, this is where I think a lot of the body of knowledge of apologetics, if you look at any apologetics books, chances are you're going to look at this one. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff developed there. Okay. And so you'll have the ontological and the cosmological and teleological argument, and perhaps we're moving slightly and we're using more the argument from morality. So, but it's, so morality exists, therefore God exists. But it's often that sort of stuff. Okay. A reasoned argument, and usually it is for God's existence. And then in each of these cases, I've just played a little bit with less useful and more useful forms of apologetics. So less useful into this sort of context would be for me to share my awesome testimony, okay? Because there's an obvious objection. It's like, just because you experience it doesn't make it true. And what you need to talk about in this context is truth. Or just, let's just bypass reason altogether and give you a scary message. So more useful is talking about evidence, perhaps also about making assumptions visible, careful reasoning, sort of figuring out together what's the truth. Okay, so the truth, the truth is out there. Sometimes it's not difficult, not so easy to get to. That's why we're having arguments about what it is. But we all agreed it's out there, and that there is a true and a false, and we're just trying to work out what that is. So that's the first one. And then, of course, I think the story. Cracks in the modernist narrative do begin to show. So we sort of realize, there's economic exploitation and unemployment and rootlessness and alienation and cultural fragmentation, and power is abused. And the benefits of modernism tend to accrue just to a few people, and perhaps of a particular race or gender or geography, the West. And so things are becoming mass-produced and artificial. We feel a loss of authenticity, and that neat, satisfying story of steady progress just doesn't seem right anymore. Okay, and we're very aware of these power abuses, or at least how power isn't sort of democratized. And so we move to, I suppose, what many people have called postmodernism, deeply critical of the abuse of power by the power elite, whatever that is. Okay, so the West, government, big business, the church is a big one as well. And to avoid power inequalities, we need to uphold all cultures and beliefs as equally valid. Okay, one person's beliefs are not necessarily truer than any other. Maybe truth itself is actually also nothing more than a power game and a cultural construct. So postmodernism makes some valid points, but it probably overshoots a little bit. Okay, not everything is about power, and not all power is abusive. In terms of the some currents, okay, so deconstructing. Okay, so being suspicious of for example, truth claims, and deconstructing how we're playing out our cultural conditioning and the power games. This idea of being skeptical towards meta-narratives. Okay, if anybody tells you a big story, a story that encompasses everything, that's just another example of a power play, of you trying to impose your view on others. A loss of meaning in language. And language can be used to manipulate, but it actually it doesn't really have as much meaning as we had hoped it would have. I put relativism in as a question mark because I don't think it's necessarily, nobody's a total relativist, but maybe we can talk about cultural relativism. All beliefs must be given equal validity, so to speak. And also this idea of tolerance is a big topic in itself as well. But that is the hope, right? If we just stop playing these power games with each other and go to war with each other about stuff and just all hold hands and be tolerant, then maybe we will create that better society. So there's a real, I think, positive hope there. But then, of course, you can do tolerance right or wrong. Does it mean all people have equal worth, or all ideas have equal worth? There's a difference there. And so in postmodernism, I would also take some kind of a distance, maybe playful, maybe cynical, because commitment and conviction are naive. Of course, one of the outflows of that is a sense of maybe hopelessness or lostness, because now I'm on this journey, and maybe the journey is an adventure, but I don't have a map, I don't have a destination. You can see, I don't know where my identity is rooted. You can see that this isn't an easy space to be in. There's in terms of this sort of flow, one of the people I'm leaning on is a lady called Helen Pluckrose. I can give you the sort of a half-hour YouTube, which I think she explains it very well. So I'm just giving you a quote here from her. Imagine that there's no object. So she's explaining this one. Imagine that there's no objective truth. Humans are blank slates who get filled up with a story. The powerful groups in society get to decide what that story is. All the slates, once written upon, tell the same story, but from a different perspective, depending on where they are in relation to power. I thought that was a very good summary of it. So doing apologetics 2 then into that, I think it should be clear that it needs to look very, very different. We need to move from all the apologetics about is this Christianity stuff true isn't the place you can start into this space. You need to start with more like, is this stuff good? Right? Because now, I have the suspicion that, Christianity, church, power abuse, etc. I need to know that this is good. You can't come all excited and go, God is all powerful, because now if your friend is skeptical of all power and power is abused in their view, okay, so you tell people about, you think you're sharing the good news that God is all powerful. Well, you're actually sharing the news of, what does it sound like? Okay, of the ultimate abuser, right? So, so that does need a recalibration of our apologetics. So, less useful, I think, our approaches here. Are you absolutely sure there are no absolutes? Okay, so you can play those games, and yes, it's self-defeating, and but you're not actually going to be scratching where the itch is, I think. Or, I don't understand these people. They hate truth. Well, no, they don't hate truth. I think they hate truth used as a bludgeon. They hate truth claims that are weaponized. And I think that's a valid objection. Or, here's a meta-narrative for you. Because remember now, meta-narratives are actually big stories are what we're skeptical about. And perhaps more useful is acknowledging valid grievances about power abuses, even of the church, or maybe about hypocrisy, or the number one objection against Christianity, if you just do a survey. I've tried this, right? I always thought it was going to be, how can God allow suffering? But usually what people come back with is hypocrisy of Christians. Okay, so need to acknowledge that. Maybe take the conversation to Jesus was against hypocrisy too. Then speaking to deepest hopes and fears, and seeking, okay, remember, truth isn't yet primary. It needs to come in, but maybe it's not the starting point. So seeking goodness and beauty together. What is true freedom? Where can it be found? What is true tolerance? How can we get there? Maybe those sort of conversations make more sense in that milieu. Okay. And then thirdly, hard postmodernism. So basically the middle one, the soft postmodernism, again, quoting from Helen Pluckrose, we can think of it as the highly deconstructive phase of postmodernism. It was ironic and pessimistically playful and fairly hopeless. It took everything to pieces, but once they were in bits all over the floor, there wasn't much more that could be done. Okay, so you get the idea. So soft postmodernism couldn't have any real convictions. It didn't have a plan. It wasn't actionable. But now we then realize we have a problem. We can't live without convictions, right? If anyone was to achieve anything, we need to have some convictions, and perhaps we even need to, oh swear word, have some objective reality. Okay, and so there's something that I can still, I can almost absolutize again. Or I need something that I can hold as true or objectively real. And there are some candidates for that, and different people might put different things there. But I think one of the mainstreams here is the decision that what is objectively real is oppression, basically. Okay, oppressive systems of power oppressive cultural constructs, mainly around race and gender. Okay, and that is then placed as that is the one truth that we're not going to lose. And then once I have that, okay, so you can see again, this is born out of I think out of a very important yearning for justice and equality in those things. Okay, so, but in this way now, if the moment I could then put something again as something that's true for everyone, something that's objectively real, postmodernism became energized. It became politically actionable. It now had a creed. It had goals. It had a mission, right? So you can see that development. And so perhaps some currents, and you've heard some of these words. This is not a talk on all this stuff. Social justice should have been put in capital letters. So social justice talked about in a way as if nobody ever cared about it before and that we have the monopoly on it. Identity, you've heard all these things, cancel culture with de and dis. The focus is on de and dissing everything. So deconstruct or maybe destroy or disrupt. But then also I think, and these currents are all, I mean, they flow together. This because not everybody buys into hardcore critical theory, but feeling as the new knowing, and now also the new knowing for sure, right? So it's not just in the soft postmodernism. I had feelings that were telling me something's wrong, and I feel a little bit lonely and alienated. But now here's a feeling as knowing for sure, and then also absolutizing a good thing. The video will get to that in terms of what that means. Taking some good goal like freedom or justice or equality or inclusion, but then making that the highest good. And so the apologetics into this space. So think with me. Here are some thoughts. I think two of the places you can that might be good to take the conversation is that in that sort of frame of thinking, you may not be going deep enough, especially when we go to this understanding of identity and how core identity, and it's usually a group identity, is to who we are. And the idea of, we need to go to the roots of who we are is one possible conversation would be, well, you're not actually going deep enough. Okay, so in terms of, you need to go find that thing that goes all the way down with regard to your identity. And if you make the all the way down, your race or gender or your age or whatever, your profession or whatever it is, your family background, you're not going far enough. You need to go somewhere down to created by God and created in the image of God. Again, I'm just throwing those out as snippets. And then also when you're taking a good, and it is a good, but you're making it into the ultimate good, then you're not going high enough. Right, you need to let that good point you even higher to the ultimate good. Okay, and obviously as Christians, we have the confidence that if you do that, you will find God there. In terms of less useful approaches here is to say, look, this is wrong, or isn't this hypocritical because you're just doing, you're just reversing the power game. Less helpful perhaps is, but facts don't care about your feelings. You're emoting, but you're not actually emoting with the facts. To say something like, I don't think it's that helpful, or to play the Christian version of the identity game, insisting of Christian truth, and now I'm playing the us against you with regard to, I'm playing the same sort of cultural wars. I'm just standing in a Christianity box, and I'm including that into the war. Maybe more useful would be an invitation, I say here, into a lived out hope. I say this because there may be one or two people in the room who last week there was this thing about, it was called How to Stay. Basically inviting some people to tell some good stories of why they're still in South Africa if they have other choices, and what they're doing, and just how they live out their hope. And in all cases, I think it was living out a Christian hope. And it was just so, just inspiring to see it as now out of this hope that, I don't know, I'm working for reconciliation, or I'm helping to fix the city, or whatever it might be. So, if you're able to see a lived out hope, that is huge. You can present Christianity as radically inclusive. Everyone's invited. Think about it. Okay, the Christian story is a liberation story, but it's a liberation story in a way that perhaps initially you didn't expect. The late Tim Keller, he has this thing, he actually calls it that, yes, but no, but yes, maybe as a general way that we can have conversations. So the first yes, there's something that can be affirmed. Yes, social justice is important, or whatever the affirmation is. But then also maybe some confront something that perhaps isn't quite right, but then also show how basically he says, show how the gospel confronts and completes the cultural narrative, whatever the cultural narrative of the time is. Okay, so how does the gospel jar against a particular belief system, but how does it also complete it in a way that you may not have thought possible? So, for example, if the narrative is to move from oppression to liberation, the gospel actually offers you a larger view of that than you might have had. Okay, because now it deals with systems and structures as well as human relationships and as well as the human heart. It's the whole deal. Does it make sense? So perhaps some approaches to Apologetics 3.0. I went a bit longer than I was hoping. Now, if you'll forgive me, I'll just need to wiggle the tech a little bit to start playing the video. This is a video by Jonathan Peugeot. He's a Canadian. He is an icon carver. I think Wikipedia says icon craver. I don't know who wrote that article. And he's got a podcast. He talks a lot about Christian symbolism, things like that. He got invited. I'm not going to give you all the backstory, but you can Google all that, to an event or an outfit called ARC. And he got invited to talk about the good. This is about 15 minutes. So have a listen to what it is that he's doing. Also have a listen to his language, and then let's talk about it, or let's talk about anything I've said as well. And my apologies that everything is so rapid fire. You have a breather now as I try and work out the technology.